Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Introduction to Web Development. Now this is going to be a pretty quick video and we're going to be talking about responsive styling. Now what responsive styling is in web design and in general is kind of writing our code so that no matter what the screen size of our users are, like if someone's viewing on a computer or on a TV even or on a phone or even like an iPad, it'll look at least like somewhat decent on all devices. And of course, when we want something to look decent across several different devices, we need to have it actually change its size and change its, usually its size and its positioning based on like how big the screen is, for example. So what we're going to actually do here is we're going to be going over the meta viewport really quick, and then we're going to be going over the various different responsive styling ways, like the methods like percentages, viewport units, and media queries, which are the most common. So without further ado, let's go ahead and open up our index.html. And I'm going to go ahead and click this Go Live button down here. And this is pretty much where we started, where we left off in the last video. If you remember, actually there is one thing. Look at the table right there. Notice how it's kind of getting bigger as the website itself gets bigger. That is an example of responsive styling. And we're going to try to actually create more stuff like that in this one. So, of course, the first thing is just talking about the meta viewport. Now, whenever we created a new website, or when we created this website, I had you guys type in this exclamation point here and then hitting enter. And what that did is it initialized a boilerplate or a template website, and along with that template website came this tag, this meta name equals viewport, and then content width equals device width, initial scale is 1. This is just needed to make a website responsive. So this comes by default nowadays when you use something like the exclamation point, the mnet abbreviation. So you shouldn't have to worry about it unless you don't have it. And then if you don't, just go ahead and add it where it is right here, this meta tag. And again, a meta tag is one of those special tags that doesn't close. It's only opened. And if this was better, like we would put a slash here, but we can also leave it without. Just because this isn't necessarily like this isn't like super strict HTML. So that is just basically the meta viewport. It's just something we need to add. And then moving on to styling. One of the main styling ways to actually have it grow and shrink with the site is using percentages. So if we come here into our style, notice we styled our table, an ID with our table, and inside we put a width. We put width is 100%. And what this means is, if you remember from the previous couple videos when I was talking about tables, is when we put percent, it means percent of parent. And in HTML, you can think of elements like children and parents. So for example, we have HTML, which is the largest parent. It's the top tag. It's the very first, you can disregard this first tag here. It's technically the very first tag. And then head and body, notice how they're both indented one level per se. You can see they're indented one level, indented one level, indented one level. Those are the first level children of HTML. For example, an li here is a child of this ul because this ul has the li inside. And if it's inside, then it's a child of the larger element. So 100% in our styles here means it has a width of 100% of the parent. And if we're looking at our table here, notice we created our table right over, right here. So it's right here in this section. And this section, by default, also has a width of 100% of its parent. So we're going to take a look at the section's parent, which notice this level right here. We're going to, right here, whoops, this indentation level. We're going to go ahead and try to follow that all the way back here, and then we'll notice the section is actually within the main. Whoops, my bad. And then the main again also has a default width of 100%. So it comes here to the parent, which is the body. So basically, what putting this width equals 100% does is it makes sure that the table is always the width of the page itself. So notice it keeps growing and then it's shrinking. And then notice this little black or this gray background here is also growing and shrinking. Because again, by default, elements have a width of 100%. Tables, and then we just added that to our table here. So that is the first kind of thing. Now, if we change this to say 80%, watch what will happen. Look, this table is now 80% of the width of the page, and it'll always be 80% of the width. So, and then like there are other ways to center this, but that would be slightly more advanced CSS, like using Flexbox or something, which I will get to in a future video. So that is percentages. Now, very similar to percentages, we can use viewport units. Now, the difference between percentages and viewport units are, remember, percentages are what's called relative. And what that means is, again, it is a percent of its parent element. But if we use these different things called viewport units, it is basically a percentage of the actual width of the screen rather than the parent. So it's a, of the actual width of the window itself. So if we go ahead and change this from 80% to 80, and then this is called VH right here, or wait, whoops, not VH, VW, it'll still look very similar. And it'll grow and shrink. And VW means viewport width. And the viewport, again, is the window, the size of this website window. And then it's 80, and the VW stands for 1% of the size. So this is 80% of the window itself. So the viewport units and the percentages are fairly similar, except percentages, remember, are parent elements. So for example, this is a really good example. If we put a div, and let's create this. So let's come down or up here, and let's go ahead and delete everything. Or you know what? No, let's delete our header from the website. Let's keep our main and our article. And then let's delete all of this here. So again, we're just keeping our table pretty much. And then let's delete our footer as well down here. So that should clear up most of our website. Boom, now we just have a table. And inside the body here, let's create a div. And remember, a div is like a section. It's actually somewhat similar to this section here, but it's just a different way of saying it. And then we're going to call this an ID of, we'll just call this black-background. And then we'll put like a P in, or we're going to say blue background because that, yeah, blue background. Otherwise, the text won't show up. So this is text right here. So this is all good right here. And then we're going to go ahead and come into our style and then type -blue-background or #blue-background, and then we're going to say background color is blue. So just by saving this, whoops, blue background, look, so this div now gets a blue background, and then the text is black, of course. And we can actually change the text color by doing color and then white, for example, and then that makes the text white. Just a fun fact for CSS. Now, when we're talking about viewport units versus percentages, what we can do is we can actually set another div inside this div. So what if we have a section in a section? Div, and then we'll call this ID equals inner div, and then we'll put another P. This is more text. So for now, all it is, it looks regular. Like there's this, and then there's a space, and then there's this. But if we happen to want to put, for a blue background, let's give it a width of 50%. Boom. So now that blue background is kind of cut off 50%. And then what if we style our inner div, which is the one that's inside, and we give this a background color of, say, white, or not white, probably, let's just do green. Boom. So notice there's this now, but if we put a 50% in here, width is 50%, then notice that it gets cut in half, and it's actually 25% of the entire website. And the reason for that is this outer div, blue background here, is 50% of the body, is 50% of the screen. And then this inner div right here, this div ID inner div, is again 50%. But when it says 50%, that means 50% of the parent, which in this case is this div here. So it's actually 25% of the screen. Now, for contrast, if we put 50 VH or VW, my bad, it'll be like almost similar because VW and percent are not quite the same. And the reason for that is notice this little spacing here between the beginning of the blue and this white. The body has some padding, and if you remember, padding is spacing on the inside. So that 50% actually is not quite 50% of the screen. So 50 VW would be the true 50% of the screen. And I know that's probably quite a bit to take in, but you can go ahead and rewatch and like kind of listen to what I said again to get a little bit of a better understanding. But the essence of it is VW and VH, which is viewport height, are absolute. VH, 50 VH would be 50% of the screen. This whole white section, the screen, while a 50% would only be half of the parent, and the parent being like the current element that that this element is inside. So yeah, and then the last little section would be media queries. Now, for media queries, we are basically figuring out how to resize things based on the size of the window itself. So we create that with this somewhat snippet here. We do an at media screen and, so this is just something you have to memorize here. And then we put a parentheses, and then we put our regular brackets. And then we can put a min or a max width of 50 pixels. And then let's just say width becomes 100 VW. And I'm probably writing this incorrectly. I am. Hold on. So yeah, this comes up all the time. I don't always actually write media queries that often. So whenever you do happen to think of something like, hey, I want to make our text, I want to change the width when the screen gets smaller, and you don't know how to do that, let's go ahead and go through an example. CSS, change width on small screens. Boom. So we search up our question, and I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of this window. And this is our favorite website as programmers. It's called stackoverflow.com. Notice how to change CSS when the screen size changes. So we click on this, and we come and take a look. This is the question that someone asked, and we scroll down here. And then generally when you see this green check mark, or if you see an answer with a number of upvotes, this is generally like the correct solution. And it says media queries, blah, 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 which is what we're actually looking for. And then we can look, and boom. We have media, min width 1000 pixels. So actually, I can probably get rid of this, and then we could say max width 50 pixels, and we're just trying to basically match. And then see, I noticed what I missed. So I actually didn't put a selector. So again, we want to say blue background, for example. When the screen gets really small, we want to make the width 100 VW. And if I save this, notice there's no more errors. So let's go ahead and make this smaller again. We can come in here and inspect. And notice I'm going to drag this to make the screen smaller. And you'll see a little change right about, or actually, wait, this is too small actually. So media max width could be 400 pixels. And you already see it actually. So let's stick with 300, 200. There we go. So right. So notice this little, there's something right here in the corner that shows how many pixels the screen is wide. So it's coming down, and then once it hits here, roughly 200, this blue extends all the way. And the reason why is we have a media query here. It says at media, and then it's saying max width is 200 pixels. And what that means is when the screen is less than 200 pixels, then apply this style. And this actually changes the width to 100 VW instead of 50 VW. And we can do many things with this. We can also set max widths or min widths. So min width is 500 pixels. So on anything that's greater than 500 pixels, we can actually set this to a width of 20 VW, for example. So let's copy and paste and change this from 100 to 20 VW, which is 20%. So as we scale this, and then if I close this here, it will actually, let me make it larger, and then boom, you see. So right here, it's less than 500 pixels, but if I make the screen slightly bigger, it becomes more than 500 pixels, and it gets to 20% of our view width. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So this has pretty much been responsive styling. As you can see, there are many different ways, like there's percentages, viewport units, and then there's also media queries that we can use to change the way our site looks depending on if it's on a computer or if it's on a phone. Because for example, if it was on a computer, you would make the min width like more than maybe like 1,000 pixels or something. And this style would only get applied when the screen gets really big. For example, we do this, we do this, we do this, and then boom, it gets smaller, just right there. Notice like that change right there is because we added responsive styling. And say like this is the transition between a tablet and a computer or something. So that's just an example. And of course, there are many different ways we could take this, and we will be covering different methods in the future. So if you want to see more videos like this, or if you happen to miss any previous videos in this series, go ahead and check out the playlist linked in the description where I'll be uploading daily. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.